Okay, I think Blackmagic might have just sold an insane amount of cameras with the new Pocket Cinema 6K Pro announcement. I just ordered 2 of them. As a longtime camera owner and operator, I feel like I've done very well over the years hitting the right purchase cycles, knowing when a new product really fits a need, and knowing when it's time to buy. And for people involved in live production, today might just be that day. Hello everybody, Carl Larson here with Pavement.media, and in this video, we're going to talk about why the brand new Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro might be the best thing to happen to your church or ministry's live productions if you're thinking about upgrading your cameras. First, let me say that this isn't sponsored in any way. These are my own thoughts and I'll be as objective as I can based on the published specs of the announcement. My opinions are based solely on my own personal experience using Blackmagic cameras, including the Ursa Broadcast and the current Pocket 6K. And just for the record, I paid full price for my pre-orders. I'm going to be looking at this announcement primarily from a live production standpoint. I've been directing live events for 20 years, and I've used everything from gross, low-end handycams to top-tier TV truck cameras. I also do a lot of shooting for narrative or short film edits where I shoot and log and handle the color in post. Here's a surprising thing to me. Over the past several years, I've found myself longing for increased dynamic range and color flexibility found in comparatively cheap cinema cameras, like my FS7 or even my GH5, when I'm working with much more expensive live TV cameras. And that's a little weird. Cameras intended for live production can look absolutely amazing. That's what they're designed to do. To have the ability to tweak colors and exposure on the fly is what makes them perfectly suited for live broadcast. But it's also what makes them complex, expensive, and usually locked to a lower resolution format suited for today's broadcast standards. A lot of times on events, I've said to myself, I wish I could have the color and optical characteristics of my cinema camera, but still retain all of the remote controls I need to make it work for live production. And that's how we get to today's announcement. I'm not going to get through every feature here today, but let's step through 7 highlights of why this new camera is so exciting, in general and specifically for live production. First, camera control. This isn't anything new, but I think the #1 reason why someone should consider a Blackmagic camera for live production is the price to performance ratio they get in the camera control page of the ATEM control software. It's not totally obvious, but you need to connect an ATEM camera to an ATEM switcher to get the ability to paint the cameras, even if you have the dedicated hardware panel. With that said, having the ability to paint cameras through software is great. We shoot our sermons on the current Pocket 6K camera, and I really appreciate how the camera control works through the 3G converter over SDI. Everything comes down the return video line to the camera and gets converted to a single HDMI cable at the camera head. I prefer this over having to run a cable to the camera to get remote control, like with a C200 or something similar. #2, built-in motorized ND filters. Let me say that again, internal motorized ND filters. Hearing this feature, I think is what pushed me over the edge to buy these cameras. Want to control depth of field and exposure properly? You need ND filters. And having these internally is massive. It's what separated broadcast cameras from cine cameras for years. And now it's built in. Want to shoot outdoors? No problem. Want to open up your lens all the way to get some nice shallow depth of field? Roll in an ND filter. Don't want to buy a filter for each lens, deal with color casts and variable NDs, or waste time swapping filters when you change lenses every time? You get the idea. NDs are a really big deal, and I'm really glad they're in this camera. Additionally, 6 stops of ND is great in my opinion. Sure, I'd take more, and some people are complaining that they wanted 8 or 10, but it's the same strength in increments that's found in my FS7, and that's worked great for me for years. I'm not sure if you can trigger these ND filters remotely from the hardware or software panels yet, but since they're motorized, I'd be shocked if this wasn't an option moving forward, if it's not there already. According to the Blackmagic manuals for the hardware panel, the filter option button on the control panel is for future upgrades, and it looks like we just got them. 3. Ergonomics. The current Pocket 6K is one of the weirdest cameras for shooting, and the ergonomics of the camera were one of the strongest drawbacks for me to recommend it fully in the past. With the screen placement, you basically can't shoot handheld with it unless your face is right in front of the screen, which is totally impractical. But now with the articulating and bright enough 1500 nit screen to pull this off, I'm going to feel a lot more confident being able to see what's going on while shooting, especially at high or low angles. Which brings me to #4, the EVF. No matter how bright a screen is, Sometimes you just need a good eye cup to really see what's going on. I am really excited about this, and that they made it articulating again makes me believe that I can put this in a handheld configuration or use it outdoors and know my operator can really see their shot. Number 5, battery. The other major thing holding the Pocket 6K back in the past was power. The internal Canon LPE6 battery just wasn't enough. 30 minutes or so of internal power was simply impractical. So most people resorted to V-locks, but that got in the way of the screen on the back, as addressed earlier. Now that an internal battery is longer, and the optional battery grip doesn't replace the internal batteries but only adds to the internal capacity, I think I feel a lot more confident about using this in a situation where I can't power the camera directly through AC. Number 6, I know it wasn't mentioned specifically in the live stream, but putting 2 standard mounting points on the bottom of the camera makes rigging this camera so much easier. In my opinion, it's actually a pretty great upgrade. Something that should have been there from the beginning. From week to week at our church, we run our 6K camera with a wireless follow focus system, and the single contact point with the base plate means that the motors can often overpower the mount and actually shift the position of the lens, and hence the image when the motor is engaged. 2 screws on the bottom will resist twisting of the camera and will really be welcomed. And finally, number 7, image quality. 6K internal recording is still kind of amazing, and I think a lot of people will end up cutting their shows in 1080 and then go back to the 6K internal recording in post to create their archival masters or highlight reels for events. The first few generations of Blackmagic cameras were not known for their image quality. In fact, there were some strange issues for a while with purple clipping of highlights, low dynamic range, and slow post workflow that just made their cameras difficult to use. But now with B-RAW, ProRes, and increased dynamic range, I can get images out of Blackmagic cameras that rival just about any other live production camera. Skin tones look great. Blacks are black. The dynamic range is nice, especially when properly white balanced and painted. It really is hard to beat. Which brings me to my final bonus point. Number 8. The thing that makes this camera so appealing to me is that it comes as close as possible to being the one camera that can do it all. Historically, there's been a pretty defined line between cameras suited to live production and cinema-style, non-hardline production. And if you took either discipline seriously, you really wanted a camera that was suited for each type of work. But now with ND filters, remote control, and high-resolution internal recording, unless you're working at the bleeding edge of your craft, we're a lot closer to having one camera that can do it all. So there you have it, the 7 or 8 things that I think will make this camera incredibly useful to a live production, or any production for that matter, and the reasons why I think it's worthy of considering for a long-term purchase. I can't wait to get my hands on it and report back to you with more in-depth information once it ships. If you're searching for in-depth content on how to improve your live productions, I'd encourage you to sign up for our newsletter at pavement.media. Over the next several months, we'll be releasing more videos like this and launching our first full-length course on the fundamentals of live video production. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.